Hey guys, welcome to a BathroomFX tutorial. I've had a couple of requests for a tutorial for the basics for Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm using CS 5.5 and there shouldn't be much difference between this and CS 6 or CS 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. The layouts are pretty much the same. So I'm going to assume that you have your Adobe Premiere Pro already open. And what we're looking at is the new project screen. So we're going to assume that we're making a new project. So we're going to click new project. Now when it pops up with the new project window, most of this stuff you can leave on default, but down at the bottom here where it says location, you want to click on browse, and we're going to pick the folder that we want our workflow to go into. And for this particular one, I've got one set up. Of course, I probably can't find it right now, but you know, that's kind of how it goes. Adobe begins with A. So once you get your folder selected, just hit select folder, and then down below, just type in whatever you want your project to be called. Premiere Pro Basics. Click OK. Okay. The window that pops up next is called the new sequence window, and this particular window, the sequence is what Adobe Premiere pretty much refers to as your source material and videos, sounds, titles that you use to create your end product video. Now, unless you are one of the fortunate few to own a Red camera, what I recommend is that you select something like HDV or HD video, click the arrow, and choose the footage resolution and frame rate that your raw footage is in. Now the video I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be cutting together something with two cats, Max and Tinker, and it was recorded in 720p and it's 30 frames per second. So select that. Your audio tracks, your settings in your audio tracks, most of that can be left to default for most videos. So just make sure that your settings for the overall video is proper. In your descriptions over here, it'll let you know what the video is, the audio frequency, things along those lines. And down below where it says sequence 01, that is when it's finally done saving and rendering and saving your end product. The Premiere Pro will call it whatever you put in here. So we're going to give it a title of Premiere Pro Basics. And click OK. So when this pops up, this is your basic workflow area where it says Premiere Pro Basics. This here is your sequence window. This is where all your importing and your drag and drop is going to be done from. So if you double click anywhere in this window here, it brings up the import window. Then you just locate the folder where your stock footage is stored. And mine is on my desktop in Adobe Premiere Pro Basics. Open it up, and I already have my cat footage put in here. Now you can select one and hit open, and of course it'll import it, or you can use your shift or control key and click them all to select them all. And once you have your files selected, just click open and it'll import them. Now once you have them into your sequence window, click away from it so that you don't have them all selected at once. And then there's a lot of different things you can do with it from here, but we're just going to cover the basics today. The window that is to the immediate right of your sequence window is your effects control window. This is where you can, if you double click one of your clips, it will bring up a preview here. Now over here is where you're able to drag different effects from your effects and presets. like lighting, color correction, curves, things like that. If you want to get into that, your different transitions um, onto your clip. And once you have your clip selected, you can hit effect controls and you'd be able to set the different things in here. The main thing that I like to use this window for, though, is you can simply, by down here you'll see two icons. One is for the volume, or sound in this case, and one is for the video. If you click and hold the mouse, your left mouse button, you can drag just the video down or just the audio down. This will allow you to select or separate the audio track from the video track. The other way that you can get your footage into your work area, which is the place where you see your video timelines and your audio timelines, is you can simply left click and hold on the speaker icon on your clip and simply drag it down, and it'll drag them both down at the same time in sync. Now you'll notice once I have video in the workflow area, you will see in this window up here, you'll see a preview of what your end product is going to be like. Now, if you press play, this is pretty much where you can play around with, figure out which parts you want, things like that, or you can use the effects window to do the same thing. But this will at least show you what you're going to end up with in the end. Plus, it's a good place to, it'll tell you how much time, how long your video is. Currently, I'm sitting at 47 seconds with this clip. But in the end, when you're done editing and everything, you play it through, and this is the window that you'll see your actual end product in. Now, with this one here, all we're going to do is I want to cut together a scene with Max getting hit with a bunch of toys, and with his brother Tinker just watching him. So now that I have my first clip dragged into the workflow area, I don't want to use the whole clip, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it down a little bit. I'm going to get it to a spot that I like, and you can increase the size of the clip so you can actually see what you're doing here by using the zoom in and zoom out down here. Simply click, and it'll show you, it spreads it out so that when you're looking at it, it's a much larger piece to work with. Now, you'll notice you have a little tool window in your bottom right corner. In the tool window, your default is your selection tool, which allows you to hold and click anywhere on the clip, with the exception of this little yellow line or at the ends. And then you can drag it back and forth so that you can reposition it in the timeline. If you go up or down with it, it allows you to move whichever you're holding, in this case the video, to a different video track. And if you did the same thing with audio, you could move it to a different audio track. Now, I'm going to select the razor blade tool over here, and I'm going to line it up over my editing, or my marker line, and just click it. And I'm going to switch back to my selection tool, and you can see now I have two clips. Now, just to note, your original raw footage and the original file is exactly the way it was when you started. All this does is, for the purposes of this project, create separate clips within Premiere Pro. Now, I don't want this first part, so I'm simply going to click on it to highlight it and click delete, and that will get rid of it. Now I'll move this back to the beginning so that the video now starts from this point. And I'll play it for a few seconds here. Okay, now at this point I'm going to stop it. I'm going to click on my razor tool again, line it up with my marker line, and I have my new cut. I switch back to the selection tool, click it to highlight it, and delete the rest of that. Now, if I need anything else from that particular clip later on, I can simply go back to my sequence work window over here and drag in a new copy. it'll have the original file intact, including whatever I've cut out already. So you can always go back to it, but this keeps it nice and clean this way. Now I'm going to drag in another section here with Tinker. Now I'm just going to play this along. Okay, I don't like it right there, so I'll use the razor tool, cut it, select the part I don't want, hit delete. I'm just going to play it until I'm happy. Okay. Now, in your preview window up here, you'll notice that you get your standard controls. The arrow to the left and to the right allows you to go back one frame at a time. This is really good when you're looking for a specific cut point, especially for audio. And now that I've got it where I want it, I'm going to select the razor tool, cut it, and say goodbye to the rest of the Tinker file. Now I'll drag Tinker back until he lines up with his brother. Now when you're dragging, by default Premiere Pro has this button over here is enabled, snap, so that it will snap to the piece that it's closest to. Now if you have multiple video tracks or audio tracks layered, it will snap to whichever one is closest to, regardless of the line it's on. So for example, if I had two video tracks laid out like this, and I was dragging another one in, let's do that, you'll see that it snapped to the top video, even though it isn't in the same timeline. This is good so that you can line things up. For instance, if I had some kind of special effect where I wanted to be able to see through one of the video layers, you could do different titles, that sort of thing. A lot of time your titles will go above your main video track. This way they overlay onto your video track. But right now, I'm just going to delete that and drag Tinker back down here with his brother and line the two of them up. And we're just going to play. There we go. It'll snap over just nicely. So now I want to grab another scene from later in the filming from Max. And of course I got Tinker. This one should be Max. Yes, it is. Now you can click your anywhere in this bar up here where you has your time or your video frame rate, anything along those lines. You can click and hold and drag your marker line, and your preview window will keep up with you and show you what is going on up here. Or you can simply click anywhere in this line and it will automatically snap the marker to that point. And we're actually going to cut it right there. Use the razor tool again. Selection tool and cut. I'm going to drag this back so it snaps up against Tinker. Now I don't want all of it, so I'm going to cut it off right there. And that's gone. So what you end up with is, of course, Max getting peppered with toys and his brother Tinker watching from the couch. Ah, that's good coffee. But right now it's just basically 3 clips put together, and I'm going to put a little title in front here. So what I'm going to do is to select all of these. I need to move them. You can hold down your shift key and left click each one, and then you can left click any of them and you can drag them all at once, just like that. Or if you want to, you can simply left click in an empty space in your work area and then drag it and highlight them all. Then you simply left click on any one of them and move them that way. And I'm just going to move them out of the way for the moment. Now up here in the top of your Adobe Premiere Pro window, you'll see Title. You click on Title, you'll see New Title, and choose Default Still. Now what this means is that it'll use whatever background is behind the area where you're going to put the title. Now in here you can do pretty much all your normal text editing that you would do in Photoshop or just about anything else. Just click somewhere in the middle here and type out Tinker and Max. Okay, now select the movement tool so I can drag it around. You can rotate it, resize it. Everything you want to do in here you can do. Now over here you'll notice that where it says center, you can click the vertical center, it'll move it to the vertical center, and the horizontal center, and that way you have an exactly centered frame or title in your frame. And up here you can switch back to your text tool, highlight this, and change the font to whichever you like. Just for today, we'll go with this one for whatever reason. And I'm going to move this over a little bit. And that looks good to me. Now, you can make it bold, italic, all the normal stuff you can do in a text editor. Over here, you can change the different properties of it by changing its color. You can add blending properties like you would in Photoshop if you want to make it beveled or have an outer glow or anything along those lines. The other nice thing in this particular case is down below you'll notice the title styles. Basically, if you click on any of these, it will change whatever your highlighted text is up here into kind of an effect for different titles. And of course you can resize it whenever you find something that you like. And sure, this is fine for what I'm doing. Okay, center, there you go, nice and quick. Okay, now once you're happy with what you've got here, just click the red X and you'll notice over in your sequence window now you have title 01. You can, when you're opening up a new title, you can give it a name if you'd like. I just kind of leave it at the default. You simply left click and drag it to your workflow, and there it is. Now, by default, Premiere Pro will make the title 5 seconds long. If you want to change that, simply put your mouse pointer over it, right click, and select speed and duration. And in here you can left click on the duration and drag it one way or the other to increase it, decrease it, whatever. In this particular case, I'm going to leave it at 5 seconds because that happens to be fine for me. I'm going to drag and select all my footage and drag it so it snaps back. Now, like I was mentioning earlier with the titles, if I put the title into a different video work line, I can drag it so that it is above my footage, and then when I put my marker over it, you can see that our title is transparent and it's laid out over our footage of Max. And I am going to not do that this time. I'm going to do this though, drag the title back to the beginning. Then I'm going to drag and select my footage. I'm going to turn off snap and slightly overlay it so that when I play the video, nice and clear, and then Max comes in behind. Now, in your video lines here, you'll notice that in here I can actually see this, and the yellow line allows me to drag it up and down to control the opacity of the clip, or whichever effect I have set to the active effect for the clip. And by default, it's always opacity, the transparency. Now, if I select the title, you can't see any of this information, but the little arrow over here, collapse and expand the track, will bring it up so that it's like your main video track. And the reason I'm going to do this is because if I double click on the title, okay, that's not what I wanted to do, but right here where you've got the opacity line in the title, if I hold down the control key and put my mouse pointer over the line, you'll notice there's a little plus sign next to the mouse pointer. By left clicking, it adds a keyframe. And at this point, all that tells the the video editor is that at this point, the opacity in the video is 100%. So I'll go a little bit after that and add another keyframe. Except on this keyframe, I am going to release the control key and just left click the keyframe and drag it down. Now, what I've done is I've said at this point, I want the opacity of the title at 0. So when I play the title now, you'll notice that I have a bit of a fade out on the title. There are other ways to do this as well, but that's the most common way that I know of. Then if you click and hold, left click and hold either of the keyframes, you can drag them back and forth so that your fade out actually starts exactly as your video appears. Or Max. So now let's assume I've got a title, I've got my clips that I wanted, I've got my video complete. I'm happy with what I've got. I need to render out the video so that the quality is as high as it can possibly be. So I'm going to select my work area by clicking in any of the blank spaces. You'll notice this yellow line appears around there. And I'm going to go up to the Sequence tab at the top of the window and select Render Entire Work Area. Now the computer is going to pre-render or pre-draw all of the video right now, and when I go to it, that means it'll be in its max quality, so that when I go to export it to Encore, it's going to be what I want. And the minute it's done rendering, it'll play it in the preview window for you so you can watch it all the way through. But in order to save the video, we're going to go up to File and go down to Export. And when you select on Export here, you'll see Media. When you click on Media, it'll bring up a window with basically your sequence settings and the video format that you selected at the beginning. Now I've got mine set to H.264, which is a format I happen to like, but to be honest, I'm sure there are more efficient ways of doing these videos, but this is the one that I found that worked for me the best. I'm going to make sure that my video settings of 720p, which is 1280 by 720, is right, which it is. The frame rate's proper, and my audio frequency is set to 48 kilohertz, which is what I wanted as well. Now I'm going to select Use Maximum Render Quality and select Q. Now by clicking Q, Adobe Premiere Pro is going to export it to Adobe Media Encoder. And the reason that it does this is so that the encoder can do your rendering of the video, which can be quite lengthy depending on how complex the video, separate from Pro so that you can go back and actually do some work, or you can close down Pro if you want to. Now, in your queue here, you'll see you've got your video title, the format that it's in, and the preset of custom. Now I'm going to drop down the custom preset here and select HDTV 29.97 frames per second, and that is your 30 frames per second. Select File, click Start Queue. Now, with a small video like this, you'll see it play out in the preview video, our preview window, but a small video like this is not going to take that long to render at all. There's no special effects. It's very simple. And once you're done, you'll hear a nice chime. There we go. Now you can actually close encoder at this point. You can close your Pro if you want, and select yes to save it. And then on your desktop, or in my case on my desktop, will be a video, Premiere Pro Basics. And when I double click on it, we have our video of Max the cat getting attacked by toys and his useless brother Tinker. So that pretty much concludes my tutorial, guys. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message on Facebook, and I'll see what I can do. You guys have a great day.
Huh? Huh? That's not bad.